We have an amazing author joining us, and of course, every week we have amazing guests. But this week, our author is middle grade author Deborah Toogood. She's a recently retired English language teacher who grew up in Moncton, New Brunswick. Her family there would spend summers at their cottage in nearby Shediac, which I used to too. I can't believe that we hadn't talked about this before, on the Northumberland shore. With three brothers, there was lots of activity, especially with their leaky rowboat, which Deborah borrowed for her first novel, Chasing the Phantom Ship. She studied at the University of Regina and Acadia University, obtained a teaching degree, and taught high school in New Brunswick, Ottawa, and Montreal. A move to Halifax in the late 80s brought her back to the Maritimes, our beloved Maritimes. After taking a few years off to raise her two children, she returned to school to obtain proficiency in teach English as another language. It was during these studies that she took additional English courses and found herself in a creative writing class and loved it. She had always been a reader, so it was a natural fit. She began to take classes and workshops through the Writers' Federation and now has published 2 novels with Nimbus Publishing. So let's bring Deborah up to talk to us about her books. Hi, Deborah. Welcome to the author journey. Welcome. It's nice to see you. I haven't seen you since the retreat in last October.
Yes, that was a wonderful retreat too.
Oh, I'm glad you joined us. Yeah, that's the Paradise Writers Retreat, which is, if anybody is interested, is coming up in this fall, and we're already half full. So if anyone's thinking of it, just make sure you jump on our website. But for today, we're talking to Deborah about her books and her author journey. And I also want to say congratulations on your nomination for the Hackmatack Award. That's coming up soon too, isn't it?
Yes, May 31st at the Central Library here in Halifax.
Oh, that's wonderful. How does it feel? It's second time you've been nominated for the Hackmatack.
Well, it was a surprise, but
I love it.
It's always nice to get nominated and to be a.
And that's a very prestigious award here in Atlantic Canada. So I congratulate you again. And I'm telling you, I was at a yoga retreat this past weekend, and there was a lot of time for in between for contemplation and meditation or reading. So I read through both of your books this weekend and thoroughly enjoyed them. I'm a huge adventure person, and I love reading kids' books. So I'm just really excited to talk about these 2 books. So where does the inspiration come from for you? You talk about this leaky rowboat. How did a leaky rowboat from childhood wind up in this beauty?
Well, I guess my first idea for a book was I wanted to write an adventure book, sort of what, when I was a kid and liked to read the stories of mysteries and so on. Mm-hmm. But at the time, I had a grade 4 class, and the boys would complain, oh, that was boring. They didn't like the books at the library and so on. And I thought they needed an adventure book. So that was the first book I wrote, and I set it on the Northumberland Strait, which I was familiar with, and had heard lots of stories about the burning ship of fire, the Phantom Ship. So I did a little research on that, and somehow it started as a short story and grew into a novel.
Oh my goodness. Well, do you know what? I could feel that, because as I read, I devoured these, and they're fun to read. I love the characters, and I also love. And I was going to jump ahead a little bit, so I'm going to wait to talk about the narration of the books. Okay, so the fiery ship. You had heard those stories, and then.
Well, then I guess I started thinking about, I could make this into an adventure, and then you have to see it at night. So the kids had to get out at night, and then it was okay, how are they going to do that? And they got out in the rowboat, but then got in trouble, and the boat's sinking, and that's when the ghost man came along and rescued them.
I love that. And it kind of sends some tingles down your spine a
Yeah.
little bit, but it's the perfect, I think the story is written so perfectly for that age group. Do you know what
Yeah.
I mean? There's just enough of that spine tingling. I mean, who didn't tell ghost stories around a campfire as kids? Right?
Yes, that's right.
I'm the ghost with the bloody finger. That was the one we always told. But it's a nice balance of, just kind of taking you right to the edge and then, bringing back to, okay, all of a sudden there's some light and there's flashlight and okay, we're going to be all right type thing. But so are these legends that you had heard as well? Like the
Yes,
ghost
I had
man?
heard about the phantom ship. I've never seen it myself, but
Okay.
I had heard about it. And I actually read, there's another book that's called Blue Nose Ghosts.
Yeah.
I used that for a lot of the information on people who've seen ghosts in Nova Scotia and different legends. And I talk about forerunners, warnings that something's going to happen. And so I sort of planted those in actually both books, that there's something else going on, but it's always in a friendly way. It's like Casper the Friendly Ghost. It's not
Yes.
scare people so they can't sleep.
Right. Yeah. Some ghost stories do that to me.
Yeah.
So you mentioned when we were chatting before we started that you had recently gotten a review from a librarian, which
Yes.
is really key because you had your students say, there's nothing in the library like this. What did she have to say about it?
Well, she's just she was from British Columbia actually, and
Wow.
she just said she had enjoyed the book and really liked the pace and the adventure and the characters. And she was familiar with the first book. She was referring to the second book.
Okay, the
And
second
she,
one, The Wild Ghost Chase.
yeah. And she liked the first book I made, Matt, one of the boys, the narrator.
Yes.
And I had 3 boys and 1 girl. And in the second book, I switched and decided let's tell it from Emma's point of view. So now we have the girl telling the story, which changes things a little bit because we only are seeing things through her. And, she liked that there was this element of change, and I developed Emma more fully.
It was interesting that she would bring that up because that was one of the questions I had. And you mentioned that you wanted to develop Emma a little more in the second book. What was the difference? Like, what were some of the specific differences that you felt between writing from Matt's point of view and writing from Emma's point of view?
Yeah, they're different characters. I mean, Matt's more steady, more careful character. But really, he's the most driven to find out about the mystery. Emma is more spontaneous, very athletic, and so it's a little different from her. And she, in the second book, you see, she makes a few mistakes and has some guilt about that. But it all turn out okay.
They are happy ending books. We're going to tell you that.
Yeah.
And what I love about it is about the second one, and I don't think this is a spoiler. There's a treasure map, and in Nova Scotia, we love the idea of buried treasure, don't we?
Yes. That's right.
Do you have an excerpt that you've got ready to read for us?
Yes, I've got 2 different spots. So the first one is actually early in the book. This is the Wild Ghost Chase, the second book. And the first excerpt is really at the very beginning when the kids are at Mrs. Hatfield's house. And this is where the map is found. So I'll read just a short part from that. In one motion, Matt bent down, scooped up the paper, and tucked it under his t-shirt. I let out my breath. An ice-cold shiver slid down my spine, and little hairs on my neck stood up. If I could have seen into the future, I would have ripped that paper out of Matt's hands and stuck it back behind the painting. The clanging in the fridge stopped. Mrs. Hatfield turned and placed a large glass bottle, the kind with a rubber stopper that flips down, onto the wooden table with a thud. I pulled my eyes back to her. How long have you lived here? A fake smile stretched across my face. Luckily, she hadn't seen Matt. For a second, I almost asked him what the paper was, but the words wouldn't come out. I didn't want to cause trouble. Who knew what Mrs. Hatfield's reaction would be? My dear, this is where I grew up. Oh, I lived away for a bit, but when my parents passed, I came back to the old house. She turned to pour the lemonade. I frowned at Matt and mouthed, "Put it back." He shook his head. Come now, sit and have some lemonade. Adam sat down. He looked up at the photo on the shelf. His mouth dropped open. He poked me in the ribs with his elbow. That man looks like the ghost man, the one who rescued Matt and me. Mrs. Hatfield narrowed her eyes. That's Granddad in his younger years. Before she trailed off and looked out the window to the sea. So that's early on in the book. And they get the map. In the beginning, they're not sure if it's real or what, but they're determined to follow it. Now, later in the book, it's just Emma and Danny, who she's kind of egged Danny on to go with her and check out this map while Adam and Matt are busy that day. So I'm just going to read a page there of what's going on. I folded the map and tucked it in my pocket. Hey, wait up, it's not a race. 57, 58, his voice grew farther away. Your steps are too big. I ran to catch up, but he had a head start. Last one there's a rotten egg. Man, he's really motoring. I pushed harder. My skin was sticky and drops of sweat covered my forehead. He's way too competitive. Always has to be first, I thought. 72, his voice faded. An acorn fell down and landed by my foot. I stopped and looked up. 2 chipmunks balanced as if on a teeter-totter on the tip of a branch. I laughed, but then a 3rd chipmunk rushed up the tree. They began to scold me so hard that the branch shook. I caught my breath. 3. Then the image of the black blob on the map flashed in my mind. My heart jumped. Mrs. Mitchell had warned us to pay attention because there were forerunners everywhere. Danny, wait, I shouted, but it was too late. The underbrush grabbed at my legs as I smashed through the forest. Ahead, Danny's red t-shirt wove through the trees like a flag. Stop! I gasped for breath. Then suddenly a crash, like a tree falling, a thud, and another as if a whole forest was falling. A scream, and the forest went silent. Even the birds stopped twittering. My stomach rose to my throat. Oh my God, Danny, no, no, no. I ran toward the crash. Thorns stabbed at me and branches blocked my way. A sticky trickle of blood ran down my leg. I looked everywhere for his red t-shirt. So Danny's actually fallen into a big pit, which was a trap set by the pirates. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. It's like one of those, is he okay? So you have to get the book to find out.
Yes.
Well, I have to say, I love little Adam, the character, Matt's little cousin. And I really like that, so he's just there visiting in the first book, which he is. And the second book, it fast forwards to the next summer. So he's gone back to Toronto, and then he comes back to Nova Scotia for a visit. Like, did you have a little cousin that trailed after you when you guys would hang out in Shediac?
No, not really. I'm not sure where Adam came from. As I was writing, it's just kind of evolved. And but yeah, he's quite the little character, and smart little guy, and yeah.
I
He
really
just
like that he's written like, he's kind of a nerdy geek, but
yeah,
that they kind of come around to believing or feeling that, that's gonna come in handy for them all. So
yes,
then they think he's kind of cool because he
that's right.
really does, help out a lot. I don't want to
Yes,
spoil, but
yeah,
yeah, he was one of my favorite characters.
yeah, yeah,
They're all very likable. They're all, I think, well-rounded. Danny's got, you've addressed some really interesting themes like grief. He's lost his mom. I mean, were those, of course, as a teacher for so
yeah.
many years, was that intentional, or did things kind of come naturally, or?
Yeah, I think I kind of wanted, there to be some problems in life, because that's, life's not perfect,
Mhm.
and how the kids, they're very resilient, and
Mhm.
but also they help each other, and I wanted to show that, and even with Emma at first, with the at odds with Jenny, uh,
Mhm.
the new girl, and but how she came to see, that Jenny's a nice kid, and
Mhm.
they become friends and so on at the end. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And so you were a high school teacher, but
Yes.
these books skew a little younger. So why was that something
Well,
that you
yeah,
thought
I
of?
was a high school teacher, but then when I went into the English, teaching English as a second language, I actually
Mhm.
taught, it was primary right to grade 12.
Okay.
So I had all the young kids as well. Yeah.
Mhm.
So it was usually 3 schools a day, with might be primary kids, and then you go on to a junior high and then a high school. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So while you were writing, did you have in your mind that, I want to write that is going to be accessible to a reluctant reader, or maybe sort of a newer reader? Was that kind of part of your thinking?
Yeah, it was, in the sense I tried to keep the language, and this is something that my editor Emily and I would talk about,
Mhm.
and sometimes she'd think, "Oh, that word's too big, take it out." And I was kind of like, "Well, kids get the context," but
Well,
then I
and one or two, hoping to
it
improve the word
yeah,
power, right? Yeah.
like, depends who your audience, who you're thinking will be,
Mhm.
but it's interesting because I had adults read the book, and so the first book, I don't do this so much now, but the first book you would be in like chapters and different bookstores and so on, woozles, and people sort of come up and chat with you and stuff. And I was surprised at adults that came up and said, "Oh, I read your book. They like reading kids' books," and it kind of takes you back, right?
It does take you back,
Yeah.
and your favorite books, and I love
Yeah.
Nancy Drew and Trixie
Yes.
Belden, and, I taught early childhood education, so I've taken, children's literature courses and things like that, so, of course, that's why I publish kids' books, and of course, it becomes an interest as well. I love these illustrations, like, these are gorgeous. Do you
Yeah, and that's not my doing, and I was very pleased with the
Really
illustrator
nice,
that
yeah.
Nimbus picked.
So they were both the same for both books, the same illustrator, right?
Yeah,
Let's see. Cover illustration by James Bentley, jamesbentley.com. So shout out to James. Nicely
yes,
done on
yes,
these. Very, very
yeah,
nice. Captured it beautifully, right? I'm thinking as we've been talking, I'm thinking back to my childhood, summer days. I was pretty young when when we would go to Shediac, but home movies and stuff playing Ring Around the Rosie. So,
yeah.
but you're also quite a world traveler.
Yes, I do love to travel, and my hiking especially.
Hmm. And so, does that lend itself to some creativity? Like, what comes first, the adventure or the imagination, or does it kind of blend together?
I think yeah, I think it does allow you to see how other people do things, other places, how other people live,
Hmm.
and of course the adventure.
Love the adventure.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a question. I want to shout out to the folks who are watching. Thanks, guys, for joining us on the author journey. And Mark Shoup, who is a fellow author, has a question. He says, Deborah, did you outline the idea for the covers, or did the artist imagine it from your story?
No, the artist actually imagined it. That's why I said I was quite impressed. And the only thing I had him change, and I don't know about it's the second book. I don't know if you can actually see it. Way out there in the water, there's a tiny little, that's the ghost man way out there. Because I said, I need the ghost man outdoor. So it's just tiny, but right underneath the...
I love it. Yes, there he is. Wait, here we go.
But other than that...
Right under the H and the A.
Yeah.
I don't know if I noticed that before.
Yeah, I know. It's very subtle, but I said, oh, I need him out there.
Yes. And so, I mean, this and the ghost ship, the phantom ship is really kind of cool.
Oh, yeah. I love the colors that they got. Yeah.
It's always nice, though. And thanks for your question, Mark. It's always nice, if an author has very vivid ideas about what they'd like to see on the cover. Like I always like them to share that with me before we go down a path that maybe they're not very happy with. And I'm not sure how much, a traditional publisher like Nimbus would involve an author in that process. But are you working on anything else now? What's coming next?
I've actually, I haven't gotten a lot of writing done this year, this winter. I hope next winter. But I'm trying my hand at a series of linked short stories, and they're actually it's adults. So it's new for me, and I don't know where it's going to take me or how long it's going to take me. But,
and what's the theme? Is there a common theme? Like what links them together?
They are, oh goodness. I think change, life changing, and so on. But yeah, I don't know if I can actually say the theme right now until I've got
going
2 stories finished and another 3 kind of rough, but I know where I'm going. But,
it's funny, I just took a workshop yesterday on writing a series. And so I'm sort of trying to write the second in my mystery series, and life happens, and I have a company and other authors that I need to work with, but I'm trying to protect time. And it was reassuring that perhaps I was on the right track, and we talked about the difference between closed and open series, and what you're talking about is open, because they're separate stories, but they have a link or a common link.
Yes, I try to carry characters, not all of them every story, but there's always someone coming through.
Yeah.
So,
oh, that's fun. That's fun. Well, we'll be watching for those for sure. So I want to come back a little bit to, using travel as an inspiration, because it certainly has been a lot of inspiration for me in my books. But when I was reading your bio, you've done the Camino del Santiago twice. And you shared with me earlier that it was your first hiking experience. That is pretty incredible for that to be your first experience. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Well, what goes through your mind as you're walking 20 kilometers a day?
What I found was there was a group of us. There was 4 of us that always tended to walk together. We had the same pace and so on. And you'd chat, but then you'd kind of fall back, or just sort of be in your own headspace because you can't talk all day. And it was just, I don't know, you just can really think, and just you're very much in the moment. That's what I found walking. And also the interesting characters you would meet on the Camino. And probably about every 20 kilometers or 10 or 20 kilometers, there would be what they call a bar, but it's not a bar. It's a coffee shop, but they would
like a juice bar.
And they're in the middle of nowheres, and there would be no road even into them. Yet so everybody would stop, drop their knapsacks and stuff, and have something to drink. But that's when you met the most fascinating people, because you'd have a chance to sit and talk from all over the world who were walking this, Camino. And then eventually you get walking, you spread out again. There could be days when you would hardly see anybody, depending, where you were walking. And other days you'd be passing lots of people. But the most fascinating was when you actually entered Santiago, the town. You'll see you're following the signs of the yellow arrow all along the way. And when you enter the town, they've embedded scallop shells into the street, each street, and you have to follow the scallop shell. And the reason it's the scallop shell, because years ago, pilgrims, to prove that they had walked it, would make it to the Land's End, where the Atlantic Ocean is, and they'd have to get a scallop shell. So now Santiago is about 20 kilometers from the ocean. So that was like the end of our hike, but we were nearing the time we had to go home. So we actually hired a local taxi driver to take us to Land's End. He didn't speak a word of English, but we really wanted to get to Land's End and see it. That's the shell.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so that's we actually did get there, but that one wasn't on foot. We got to Santiago on foot.
Wow. So did you keep like a little journal as you went? Did you like keep descriptions of some of those characters?
I did. And then you also have what they call your passport. It's like a folded card, and you get it stamped at each bar, or different restaurants along the way will stamp that you're actually on your journey. And so at the end, if you've walked this and you have it all, you get your certificate saying you walked.
Wow. And what was the purpose the first time you went?
I think curiosity for me. It is very much, or traditionally in the past, was a religious pilgrimage. And that really wasn't my motivation. It was more just curiosity. I'd read about it and heard about it, and it was the challenge, could I actually do this? And it was, I always tell everybody I meet, you got to do the Camino.
You got to do that. Well, it's been in the back of my mind. So
what's that? Go ahead.
At which point in your writing journey did that fall? Like, was it before you wrote either book? Was it in between? Or
let me think now. I think I had started the first book, but it was sort of like a short story in the beginning. And it kind of was there. And then I did a writing program at Humber College in the summer, only like, a 2-week program. And it was then that you had to bring some writing. And my instructor looked at it and said, well, this isn't a short story, this is a novel. And that's, I thought, I guess I've got to write it now.
I love it. I love it. Well, you never know what's going to spur you on. And it was actually a beta reader and somebody I was in a writing group with in Phuket that read my second mystery novel that is now going to be the first of a series. And she's like, I see this main character like in a series, and she could be like an amateur sleuth. And I'm like, oh, well, really, it was like the end, done, done. You're right. So you never know where that inspiration is going to come from. Wow. Well, and so if people want to get a hold of your book, where can they get them? Your books?
Oh, they can. I know there Chapters, Amazon, Nimbus, Woozles.
Oh yes, Woozles has them, and of course, here's lovely. I think they're both on Amazon. I should have checked Woozles and pulled that up. We love Woozles. They're here in Halifax, very supportive of local authors as well. And I'll get this out of the way. And so hopefully you'll get your series of stories done and get those out sometime not in the not too distant future.
That's right.
And keep those adventures going.
Yes.
Yes. Have you got any advice for newbie authors or would-be authors
Mhm.
of middle grade
Well,
or
I
anything
guess,
else?
if you can write a page, you can write a book. Um, it seems overwhelming at first, and I remember my first writing it, I thought, "Oh my god, I'll never get 100 pages," And it does evolve. Like, at first, your draft looks, like, pretty bad. Yeah, it's all in pieces, and you move things around, but then you start growing and adding to it, and, it just kinda happens, but it's not quick. It can take some years to actually have a book, so.
Right. And as an English language teacher, are you hard on yourself?
You know what? I think you are. I think you tend to not wanna move on to the next page until that first page is perfect. Slows you down. You really just gotta get it all down there and then worry about fixing things later, and, I
Exactly.
have to keep telling myself that because I'll keep
Do
wanting to write a sentence until it's grammatically perfect.
Well, it should come out perfect, shouldn't it?
You know,
And so you mentioned the kids in a class that said there was nothing in the libraries. Have you gone back to that particular library and said, "Here are my books. Please put them on your
Oh,
shelves"?
no, I haven't.
I
Yeah.
think you should. I
Yes,
think you
that's
should.
right.
And say, "I taught here, and this is a result of some of the feedback I had from my students."
That's right.
Well, I congratulate you. I thoroughly enjoyed reading both of these books. I devoured them over the weekend, so I highly recommend them. And congratulations again on the Hackmatack
Yeah.
nomination for Ghost Chase, right?
Yes.
So that's going to be in the running later this month.
Yeah.
So we'll cross our fingers and toes for you.
Yes.
And thank you so much for joining us on the author journey today, Deborah.
Thank you.
And we'll hope to see you again.
Yes.
And thank everybody for watching the author journey this week with middle grade author Deborah Toogood and her gorgeous 2 books. I keep showing them because they're so beautiful. Chasing the Phantom Ship and Wild Ghost Chase, all available from your local bookstore or your favorite online retailer. And I hope you are reading something good this time around. And I wish you happy reading and writing. And we'll see you next time on the author journey. So I'm Anne O'Connell with OC Publishing, and I'll say bye for now.